Good morning, everyone. The time is now 10 o'clock, so let's get started. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who have joined us for this meeting of the Highways and Transport Committee, either in person or via the live stream. This is a special meeting, so I'm very grateful to everyone that has made it. The County Council allows filming and photography at its meetings, but could I please request that members of the committee and the public turn their mobile phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place? I would like to remind everyone present that the meeting is live streamed and a recording will be placed on the council's website, and the meeting will be adjourned at the 2-hour mark. There is no fire alarm scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will leave the room by the side doors and use an external fire exit to assembly point in the car park. Okay, with the Democratic Services Manager, please report any apologies for absence. Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from Councillor Damory Homan and Councillor Seif is substituting, and I have apologies from Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or non-statutory disclosable interests? Nope. Brilliant. We've received 5 questions for today's meeting, 2 of which relate to agenda item 3, the Highways and Investment Winter Readiness Plan, and 3 of which relate to agenda item 4, which is the Highways Asset Management Strategy. We're going to take those questions with the relevant items in the meeting. So let's get started. Oh, yes. So the council normally lists key decisions first on all policy and service committee agendas. However, on this occasion, I'm going to take item 4 before item 3, as I think it provides the context for item 4. So we'll take the policy before we take the funding, because I think that works better. So the next item on the agenda is the Highways Asset Management Strategy, and that's presented by the Head of Asset Management Design and Delivery, Josh Rutherford. Josh, thank you for joining us today, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to introduce this report seeking approval of the Council's new Highways Asset Management Strategy. The strategy sets out how we will manage, maintain and invest in Cambridge's highways assets in a way that delivers safety, best value and long-term asset performance for our residents and communities. This is an important document because it establishes a clear, transparent and evidence-based framework for how decisions about highway maintenance will be made in the future. It replaces the existing highway operational standards and will become the overarching strategy that guides both our planned and reactive maintenance activities across the county. The strategy has been informed by national best practice, extensive officer engagement, feedback from members through the cross-party member working group, and the views of residents and stakeholders who continue to tell us that the condition of the highway network remains one of their highest priorities. At its heart, the strategy adopts a stronger preventative asset management approach. Put simply, this means carrying out the right treatment at the right time before roads and other assets deteriorate to the point where more expensive intervention becomes necessary. By doing so, we can seal and protect roads, reduce the likelihood of potholes forming, extend asset life, improve safety and ride quality, and make better use of available funding. This approach is particularly important given the scale of the network we manage on behalf of residents. Cambridgeshire is responsible for maintaining more than 4,500 kilometres of roads, 2,700 kilometres of footways, over 3,200 kilometres of public rights of way, and many thousands of other highway assets that are essential to daily life. The benefits of the strategy extend well beyond road condition alone. A well-maintained network helps people travel safely to work, education, healthcare and leisure activities, supports local businesses and economic growth, and enables active travel and public transport use. The strategy is therefore closely aligned to the Council's ambition for a healthy, fair and sustainable Cambridgeshire. Members will also see that the strategy introduces clearer and more transparent maintenance standards, more consistent intervention criteria, improved preventative repair approaches, enhanced support for walking, wheeling and cycling, stronger management arrangements for soil-affected roads, and a greater emphasis on data-led decision-making and value for money. Importantly, the strategy strengthens accountability, it establishes clearer service standards, increases transparency around how investment decisions are made, and ensures that maintenance funding is targeted where it can deliver the greatest benefit for residents and communities. There are also significant environmental benefits. Preventative maintenance treatments reduce the need for deeper, more carbon-intensive reconstruction in the future, minimise repeated visits to the same location, reduce disruption from roadworks, and help improve the resilience of our network during periods of extreme weather. Finally, adoption of the strategy aligns Cambridgeshire with national asset management guidance and supports the Council's ability to maximise external highways funding opportunities from government, while ensuring we continue to meet our statutory duties to maintain a safe highway network. Overall, the strategy provides a clear roadmap for how we will manage the county's highway assets in the most efficient, sustainable and cost-effective way possible, while maintaining a safe and reliable network for residents, both now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. And now we've received 3 public questions in relation to this item. So I'll now invite Mr. Daniel Fulton to present his question to the committee. I think Daniel's on Zoom.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Brilliant, Daniel. You've got 3 minutes to present your question. Over to you.
Thank you. Paragraph 3.5 of the officer's report for the Highways Asset Management Strategy makes a clear commitment that every carriageway defect more than 25 millimeters deep will be repaired within 13 weeks. However, the strategy document itself qualifies this with the words, quote, budget allowing. It also says that defects meeting the scoring threshold only, quote, may be ordered, while repairs of defects scoring below the threshold will not be ordered and will remain on the long list. Does the council agree that residents should be told plainly whether the 13-week period is a guaranteed service standard or a conditional target? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fulton. And Josh, I'll hand over to you for an answer.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. The 25 millimeter deep repair category is for preventative rather than safety reasons and is identified as such within the strategy document. This new preventative category focuses on repairing as many issues as possible when it is more cost-effective and efficient to address them before they become safety defects and within the budgets available. As with all non-safety linked highways maintenance work, there is a need to prioritise how it is delivered given the finite funding available. Whilst the council has increased its investment significantly since the start of 24-25 in highways maintenance, it doesn't have enough funding to address everything at once. The prioritisation process outlined within the document will enable officers to follow a data-led approach, which can then be used to inform maintenance programmes, as well as addressing as many defects as possible preventatively up to the budget available and before they become safety defects. The approach outlined will be a considerable improvement compared to the one currently being followed and allow the funding available to be maximised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Fulton, for your question. Next up, I have Miranda Fife. So I'd like to invite Miss Miranda Fife to present her question to the committee. So if you want to come up, it's the button in the middle. You have traffic lights in front of you. You have 3 minutes to ask your question. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. People may remember that I came to your March meeting where I spoke about the total mismatch between your published standards versus the reality of what happens when a member of public makes an online fault report. For instance, there's a fundamental clash between your promise to repaint giveaway lines within 5 days versus your policy to achieve best value by focusing white lining works only in periods of suitable dry weather. I had expressed the opinion that your published timescales are a complete fiction. And I'd said, it is dishonest to put such a process down on paper unless you have the resources and procedures in place to actually carry out what you promise in practice. During that ensuing discussion in March, various of the councillors present had pushed back on my fiction remark, stating that they thought the strategy represented the ambition of the council. Councillor Green had warned that perhaps there was a risk of over-promising, with the timescales shown. And it was noted that the online report it tool was not mentioned in the strategy, so it was not clear how that fits in. Another member of the public at that same meeting in March had also asked a question highlighting their own bad experiences of trying to report faults via that tool. And councillors around the room also shared that they too found the response to reports was poor. So now, despite months of you having a working group refining this document, it seems to have come back to you for approval now, still with no mention at all of how the online report it tool fits into these processes and timelines. Given that the online reports generate an auto response of, quotes, "We will assess your report within 10 working days," how will you ever fulfill the ambition to fix anything within 5 days, let alone the 2 hours stated for emergency repairs. So perhaps my key question is, when does that clock actually start ticking? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fife, and thank you for your question. It is definitely a very valid question. I will just caution you quickly, though, about using words like dishonest and essentially accusing our officers of lying. We do need to be very careful with that sort of thing. Obviously, we want to make sure that we do take all criticism and constructive feedback very well and that we do respond to it, but please do just be careful with how you phrase things, particularly to our officers with those things. But Josh, I'll hand over to you, though, to answer the substance of the question.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. I agree that it is important that maintenance targets are realistic and can be met. The time frame in which we will either repaint road markings or install appropriate warning signage instead of repainting the road markings at that time is dependent on the type of road and the type of road marking which is missing. For example, whether it is a regulatory type of marking like a stop line or not. Response times start from 5 days and stretch to 13 weeks. This is consistent with other risk-based approaches outlined in the document. Officers aim to investigate customer reports within 10 working days as per the automated response referenced. Once the report has been investigated, an order will be placed, which could be 2 hours, 5 days, 21 days, or 13 weeks, which is in addition to the referenced 10 working day investigation time for officers. Whilst this is outlined on the splash screen of the Report It map and on our website, pardon me, sorry, officers will consider how this can be made clearer on both our website and in the strategy document before the document goes live on the 1st of September. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Josh. And thank you for your question, Ms. Fife. Finally, we had a question from Linda Worth from the British Horse Society, but I believe Linda is unable to make it, and therefore she will receive a written response to her question. Brilliant. Okay, committee, over to you then. Do I have any questions for Josh and the officers or any points of debate? Who wants to start me off? Go on then, Councillor Garner, who was part of the working group. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would just like to thank Josh and the officers for all their hard work. Oh, sorry. I would just like to take this opportunity in thanking Josh and all the other officers for all their hard work in the working group in producing this plan, because I do think it is a considerable improvement to what we had previously. The question that I just wanted to go through with you was with regard to the worst state. I think, let me just get to the correct page. Where we've got, with regard to worst state roads, you know, we're going to repair the worst. How does that relate to rural roads? I know I'm always banging on about rural roads, but I just need a bit more clarity for my residents that live in rural areas, how that applies to the narrow rural roads that takes all types of traffic, whether it be cyclists, pedestrians, HGVs or whatever. So that was the question really, Josh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. And actually, just before we go over that, I do want to say thank you to all the members of this room that were part of that working group. I think it was really collaborative. It was great to have Alex, Darren, you and others there. I think thank you to everyone for going into that so honestly and openly with the best wishes and aims of residents in mind. It was really good and collaborative. So thank you for that first. But Josh, do you want to answer Ian's question?
Thank you. So, Ian, just to make sure I've got it right there, essentially how the preventative approach outlined is applied to kind of the rural road network. Yeah, okay. So I suppose the preventative approach, first of all, is kind of agnostic. So it's not a particular type of route that is favoured through it. Essentially, what we're going to follow is a data-led approach where we go around, we drive the whole network. We assess the network condition and use that kind of condition data to then feed into the prioritisation process to then identify what roads we repair each year through our capital investment programme. Because the funding is finite, we have a significant backlog as well. We're not going to be able to do all roads at once, which is why we use the prioritisation process. There are a lot of roads around the county this year that are rural in nature, exactly the same as you've described, which are being surface dressed or otherwise treated. We've got 200 roads kind of in the programme this year, which are taking that kind of preventative approach through. So surface treatments, micro asphalt, surface dressing, etc. And a lot of those are rural in nature. But because there is a backlog and because there is a finite amount of money, we need to prioritise how we invest from a capital planned works perspective, as well as that the strategy kind of identifies how we will manage a safe network as well. So the fixed intervention criteria and everything else are again agnostic and applied to the whole of the network. In addition, we have kind of capital budgets for patching and things like that to make sure that we do keep those in a safe condition.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Next up on the list, I've got Councillor Seath.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. As you know, I'm subbing today, so I'm coming to this paper cold. I'm very, very much in support of the concept of preventative maintenance and increasing that capacity and also quality assurance. But the one question that I do have is not integral to the main part of the thrust of the paper, but it is our own ability to monitor and ensure quality assurance. And so we are increasing the number of inspection officers. How confident are we that we can find these officers in time? And particularly, I'm going to say this, with LGR looming and the uncertainties over that. I mean, how easy generally is it to recruit officers, but in particular for this particular role?
Thank you, Councillor Seath. Josh, do you want to give some background on recruiting HMOs?
Yes, yeah, thank you. So I think first of all, I'll just address the points around kind of quality assurance. Incredibly important. We need to make sure that the work that we deliver is to the right specification, and if it isn't, then others are held to account and it's put right as soon as possible. We have kind of a 5% random sample, which is baked into all of our reactive maintenance kind of pothole repair work. Wherever possible, we'll increase that beyond the 5%, but a 5% sample of kind of nearly 70,000 pothole repairs is still pretty considerable. As well as that, we go out and assess 100% of kind of our actual capital projects. So every single surface treatment that's delivered, every single resurfacing scheme is kind of walked through after it's completed, it's snagged. And that kind of list of defects or whatever needs improving is then kind of shared with our contractor and those are addressed. So that's kind of the quality element and how we're focusing on that. In addition, we're producing a number of kind of standard details, standard ways of working and everything else, which then means that everyone is on the same page with regards to what they're doing, reduces variation, and again means that quality can hopefully improve considerably. So then moving on to kind of increasing inspection officers and resource and recruitment, I suppose we're at a point now where the highway maintenance and management service is pretty much fully staffed, and that's with permanent staff as well, which is excellent. It's definitely been a journey within that service over a number of months, and having those boots on the ground, being able to kind of answer the customer reports, do the inspections and everything else is definitely kind of delivering the benefits that we'd hoped. More generally, within this industry, there is a shortage of resource. There are not as many kind of young people coming through within civil engineering as are exiting the industry, and that is a challenge. With put a number of people through apprentices. Very recently, we put 5 people through apprenticeships who came in at an apprentice level, and they've graduated into kind of different officer roles within various teams across highways, which has been a real positive. We're continuing to kind of explore and promote apprenticeships. And I suppose on a positive note, proof's in the pudding. We have managed to fill all of the roles that we've got available, or as near as good as filled all of the roles we've got available with permanent officers in our recruitment drives to date.
Thank you. And just, yeah, to echo that, Josh, I think we're currently at the highest number of filled permanent roles that I've ever had since in this role. And that apprenticeship program has been incredibly successful. It's been great to see so many apprentices coming through. It was something that we started under joint administration, and it's great to see that starting to pay dividends. On the quality piece, though, Councillor Seath as well, it's worth pointing out, obviously, our new highways contract comes with penalties, I guess we should say, for any work that isn't up to standard. And so what that does mean is that if we are finding work not to standard, that will essentially give us more money to be able to do more inspections and be able to scale up the inspections to make sure we are catching things. So it is kind of one of those cycles that goes around. The worse it is, the more money we have to inspect to actually go and get more and make sure that we are inspecting things properly. That core baseline level, though, gives us a really good baseline what we're expecting quality to be. Next up on my list, though, I've got Councillor Edge. Johnny, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to follow up and also say, great to see this paper. I think it's showing a lot of valid improvements that we really need to see. My question kind of follows on from Councillor Seath's, really. I was also thinking about the officer side of this, but thinking more in terms of how much analysis we've done in terms of thinking about how this will impact on their day-to-day and deliverability of these additional kind of ways of looking at things. So hopefully a fairly straightforward one.
Can answer that myself, but Josh, do you want to answer it?
Yep, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Edge. So it's fair to say from the beginning that was one of the kind of key considerations. We don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, and we also don't want to put our officers in a position where there is too much to do and it's not realistic. So what we've done is we've carefully reviewed the previous intervention standards, and we've come up with a new set which we feel kind of makes things simpler for officers in the first instance, simpler for officers, simpler for members to understand, simpler for the community to understand as well with regards to those kind of standardized intervention levels. We have also looked at where if we are investing more and we're looking to undertake more kind of preventative maintenance by default to address defects before they become safety defects, then what else can potentially give slightly to then free up officers to have more capacity to maybe look at, managing customer reports, etc. So we've also reduced the inspection time from the 4 weeks to the 6 weeks, so that's still absolutely within kind of national guidance and parameters, but instead of kind of doing a monthly inspection, they'll do a 6-weekly one, so there'll be 9 driven ones over the year instead of 12, again freeing up resource and capacity to kind of focus on other things as well. When we set up the officer areas, we looked carefully at kind of the amount of network that they have to cover and drive, and also the average amount of customer reports over the last 5 years that they've received. And we'll continue to kind of review that on an annual basis as well, because obviously we've had a peak over this winter, and it's always good to make sure that everything's as kind of spread as possible across the county from a workload perspective too, so there's no single points of failure there. So I think that's probably a summary, and Alex, if you want to add anything.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, Josh, I think you've covered most of that really well there. I mean, I think one of the things was to simplify this, though. So having the same kind of intervention levels across many different roads means that it's much easier for people to understand that kind of core level. The other big point of this is that highway maintenance is very kind of roller coaster peaky. You know, in the summer there's not very much of it. In the winter time it goes absolutely nuts and we end up rushed off our feet, and then it goes down again. So being able to scale that is very challenging. By introducing that 13-week program at 25 millimeters, which is significantly lower than we've ever had it before, it means we can do far more of those over the summer, where it's a really good time to do it, while officers aren't spread thinly, which then means that hopefully when it gets to wintertime, where there is a real danger of us not having enough staff to be able to cope with things if they get bad, it'll have reduced that down. So it should help even out kind of the pothole waves in a certain way to help things. But thank you for that question. Councillor Bulat.
Thank you, Chair. And I know how much work has gone into this by officers and members in the working group. So it's often like quite difficult to see where you can actually make improvements practically and within the budget as well. So like well done to everyone involved. Of course, it's like an improvement to the previous version. So I really want to thank everyone who has been involved in this. I do welcome many of the changes. And one of the things I wanted to highlight is particularly around response times for blocked gullies and collapsed and blocked systems, because it's something that wasn't in there before. And I think there's a big opportunity in terms of engaging with local flood action groups and other community groups as well, because they're often the ones on the ground reporting, to not only make them aware of this, but also to improve that communication. Because as we heard from one of the public questions from Miranda 5, I think that there's a lot of issues around like how we actually communicate to residents and how we engage groups to not only have improved trust in the system, but also to address the issues where the response times are not there. So I would like to hear more in terms of, so the question I guess on that is, how do we engage more of the local groups, especially in terms of the flood mitigation space, for them to be aware of those new standards and then actually be able to help the highways team with those. And then the broader question is around what the chair mentioned in terms of the new contract now, or the revised contract having financial penalties. How are those improved standards reflected in the ways of working now, and what is our confidence in the capacity to actually enforce this? So if we can maybe give a bit more detail in terms of how practically it would work, I think it would be of benefit to the public and the wider committee as well. I will leave it at this. I have more questions on item 3, but I will leave it at this for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh, do you want to respond to any of that?
Yes, thank you. So I think, first of all, how can we engage with residents and communities, specifically around flooding? We're going to be working with our flood and water team closely to basically push some of this out and engage with those kind of particular groups more, making them aware, as you've said, of kind of those response times, and also kind of leaning on them to give us that kind of community-based feedback as well. In addition, we're going to have some more general engagement sessions. We're going to have kind of the website and everything else will be updated. We'll be kind of cascading things to parish councils and members, but we'll also be doing a number of kind of Q&A type sessions and presentations with parishes as well in the run up to the 1st of September, and then once it goes live as well, just to make sure that people are aware of the changes and also have that opportunity to ask questions as well. One of the things we've discussed and we're also exploring is a more open kind of Q&A, which kind of community groups, residents, etc., are able to join as well. But that's something that we're exploring at the moment. With regards to kind of enforcing the standards that are within here, I think, first of all, we've tweaked and adjusted and improved processes, standardizing them, making them simpler and clearer. The actual response times and everything else are the same as currently. So, we've got a 2-hour response, a 5-day, a 21-day, and a 13-week. So how we'll be enforcing that, how we'll be monitoring that is through the kind of low service damages that Alex had referenced. We'll be making sure that there's kind of frequent discussions with M Group about workload, looking ahead, making sure that things are correctly profiled. One of the advantage of the 13-week 25 mil intervention instead of the safety defects mean that we have more time to kind of plan and program those efficiently, get ahead of the game, which means that from a reactive perspective, we should hopefully decrease the amount of 5-day and 21-day type of orders that are going through, which means that it's better for us because we're potentially saving a significant amount of money, doing the work as efficiently as possible on those longer term programs. It's better for M Group as well, because they have more time to program, plan and manage their kind of workload. And then, that will all be kind of managed digitally through kind of a suite of dashboards and everything else that we have in place, and those regular touch points with M Group as well, to make sure we're all talking, we're all collaborating, and we are also tracking performance.
Thank you very much, Josh. Councillor Manning.
Thanks, Chair. 3 points or questions, Josh. I think it's also true to say in the new contract we've got this additional step where they have to take an image of repairs. So would it presumably be fair to say that that's also going to free up some officer time for some of this other work? The second one is looking at the quality impact assessment, probably just from my understanding, but I note that it says positive impact on age and disability. Is that presumably because we're doing more proactive work? Because obviously a safety defect presumably impacts absolutely everyone, right? Whereas the road starting to break up probably disproportionately impacts people with disabilities, people who are infirm. So is that the reason for that? And if so, I think we could sing about that a little bit more. It's kind of slightly dry in the UQ way I read it in the UQ. I've had to interpret it a little bit. And the sort of third, more substantive one, the verge clearance improvement regimes. Could you just explain a little bit how that interacts with the different districts and the sort of crossover responsibilities?
Josh. Madly typing away.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Manning. So I think first of all, yes, thank you for highlighting those images. Absolutely. Part of a new process which will kind of free up officer time, the requirement there, which is again kind of linked to low service damages as well. So if it's not provided, then there is a penalty for that. Is those images of the repairs. So a before picture, a during, so showing the repair kind of all cut out, and then an after as well. So we'll have those 3 clear kind of images of the whole process, which officers can obviously then, instead of going out to site to inspect, they can review through Aurora, our asset management system, and make sure things are kind of, and have been done as expected. So yes, on that one, that will improve efficiency as well. The quality impact assessment, yes, that's exactly it. So getting ahead of the game there, and making sure that before something becomes a safety defect, it is addressed as far as possible with that 25 mil intervention. Within the asset management strategy as well, there's also some other intervention criteria, kind of near active travel routes. So for example, if it's on a desire line, then the response time defaults to kind of a 5-day, that type of thing. So again, it's making sure that where vulnerable users are more present, we're looking to address those issues as quickly as possible from a safety perspective and also a preventative perspective. And then the verge clearance and how it interacts with the districts. So is this the kind of encroaching vegetation and everything else? Yeah. Okay. So where it's encroaching onto the highway, we will basically address it within those particular intervention levels that we've set out. So 1 meter, if vegetation is encroaching within 1 meter on a footpath or a footway, then we'll ensure it's cut back. We'll look to cut it back to the highway boundary as much as possible, or as far as possible. If it's on an active travel route, then it's that 1.5 meter kind of criteria as well. We'll be looking to work with the districts. We'll also be looking to work with the parishes, and we'll be looking to work with residents too, because a lot of encroaching vegetation is private vegetation. And there is a process which involves lettering residents to ask them to cut back vegetation and everything else. So again, if we can look at improving that process, so we are getting ahead of the game there too. Especially when we know that routes are going to be used more, for example, when schools go back, that type of thing, and making sure that we try to hit those in a more consistent and kind of tactical manner, then that's something we're going to look to push through too. I'm not clear on specifically how else interacting with the districts was. Did you want to?
Fine, you covered the question. I feel like I just passed an exam. The images I didn't realize you had before, during, and after. I mean, there may be complications around this, but I'm wondering if we could think in future about starting to publicize that. We talk about really showing residents what we're doing and how things are actually being done. What's the comment we always get? Oh, that was a shonky job. Well, if it actually can show what was actually done, okay, it might break up again later, but if we actually show the work was done in a way that we can monitor, I think that might build some trust back up.
So that's on kind of the development pipeline with Simology. So yes, where we want to get to is the resident gets a email which says your work has been completed. They also get the images which say, here was it before, here it is before, here it is afterwards.
Thank you. And Councillor Manning on that one as well. There's a couple of other changes that we're trying to make on that. Firstly is to almost add another report type, which is to report this is not good quality work, so that we can track those separately. I also have a passion project of trying to use some machine learning to look at those photos and actually auto-analyze how many of them are good repairs versus bad repairs. The techie in me thinks it's not that difficult a problem to do, and giving us 100% coverage of those photos to give at least an idea of how good quality the repair was would be an actually really worthwhile thing to be doing. Next on my list, though, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. So my understanding is the review of the asset management strategy was needed to free up funds from the Department of Transport. So it could have just been a tick box exercise, and we could have just sat there for several hours and gone through a document. But in fact, it was anything but. And I'm sure my colleagues who are on the meeting, on the working group, will back me up in saying we would often spend 10 or 15 minutes discussing 5 mil here, or the exact shape that was needed with several potholes before the whole area needed resurfacing. So I would like to thank everybody on the working group. We really did put a lot of time in, but especially Josh, who led the groups fantastically. And also Chair and Vice Chair, it was obvious that the amount of knowledge you have in this area and the enthusiasm you have as well. I'd like to thank you very much. So yes, one of the things, I don't know, Josh, if you mentioned this, but one of the things I found also reassuring from the working groups is that we looked at best practice in the surrounding local authorities, and I hope that will mean that we now, obviously that is a reassurance that we're now following what other local authorities do, and if they can maintain their roads, then why can't we? I'm really reassured to hear, Josh, that you do feel that the new document is achievable with the resources. Obviously, highways officers and money, and we'll come to that in the next item, I guess. Yeah, I just again like to thank everybody for their time involved, and I think we've achieved a simpler document that again residents can have a look at and understand. Whether that means we'll all get more emails or less emails about highways and more questions at Highways and Transport, or less, who knows? But I think it's really good that we'll have a document that everybody can reference. It's simple, and everybody can look at the road condition and say, yes, that should be fixed, or that's not quite there yet for a fix. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, Councillor Green, I didn't realise just how many hours could be spent talking about potholes. It is not something I thought I'd do before I became a councillor, and the sheer number of emails that I get is astonishing. Do you think, Josh, do you want to talk about how we are in relation to other areas? Because that's an important point. I think we now exceed actually a bunch of other local areas. And having driven in Essex the other day, I was very pleased to get over the border back to Cambridgeshire because our roads were significantly better. I was with somebody else pointing out every pothole going, oh, interesting. But Josh, do you want to talk about how we are in relation to other areas?
Yes, yeah, thank you. I think first of all, I'll just touch on Councillor Green's other point, which was around the DFT requirements. So essentially, hopefully, as most members know, there's an incentive fund, and the DFT have a requirement that the council and other local highway authorities have to complete a number of criteria to unlock that funding. 12.5% of the criteria this time around is around having a highway asset management strategy that's been reviewed in the last 2 years. So with regards to this, we've absolutely reviewed it. We've refreshed it. We've done more than that. And we're able to also demonstrate how kind of preventative maintenance and a preventative approach, which is another thing that the DFT kind of assess through the transparency report, is kind of a golden thread that runs through both the reactive maintenance that we undertake and also the planned as well. So I see that as a real positive, and it's obviously something we'll be referencing in our response in September as well, and there will be a report which comes to committee prior to that response as well. So that's the first point around the DFT requirements. The second kind of best practice in surrounding authorities. So what we did is we looked at kind of all authorities across the Eastern region. We looked at kind of response times, intervention criteria, and how they approach things. So where we've kind of aligned ourselves with them is with regards to those kind of different intervention levels for what might be a 21-day response, what might be a 5-day response, and also the kind of what is defined as a pothole. So 150 mil wide basically is the definition in some other authorities. In others, it's 200 mil wide. So there is still some variation there, and we've kind of defaulted to the best outcome, if you like, rather than going to the worst, so to speak, with regards to the 200 instead of 150. By way of assurance as well, if we were to compare kind of where we're intervening on a 21-day response time at the moment, most other authorities in the region are still doing the same type of response on the same type of road within 35 days. Or it just defaults into a planned works program without any kind of fixed shorter term response. And that's for a safety defect as well as kind of a preventative as well. So whilst we've carefully considered where we're aligning ourselves with other authorities, and we've looked to kind of improve things as well, we have also made sure that in some areas we are still kind of leading by example.
Thank you, Josh. It's very good to hear us leading by example. I've still got quite a lot of people left. We've got Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Hathorn, Councillor Goldsack, Councillor Dupree, and Councillor Wyatt. Oh no, Councillor Goldsack. Okay, let me take you off the list. I'm amazed. We can always talk a lot about potholes. I am always amazed at how much people can talk about potholes. Let's go with Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. 2 questions from me. The one thing I think I find most frustrating, I think a lot of residents too, is land ownership, where a road is not adopted, and there's some parts, I mean, you look at the estate here, for example, and Alconbury Weald, roads that have been here for many years, still not adopted, so not public highway. Also an issue with vegetation, cutting back overgrowth. I just wondered, is there a way in which this will make that a bit easier for people to recognise and to know where we can intervene, where we can't, whether it's responsibility of a district or parish council or a developer? My second question is, I'm going to use those 3 dreaded initials, LGR. Do we know, in terms of staffing, are the team comfortable that the changes in local government obviously will have an impact on them? How comfortable are they with that? I always find that the teams that we have are very good. My own experience, local highway officer we have is excellent. Their predecessor was excellent, but there was quite a gap between the recruitment, which meant that for a few months in my patch, we didn't have a local highway officer. I appreciate that is very difficult. So I think you've done well to sort of get staffing up to a much higher level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Josh?
I think I'll take the last point first, if that's okay. So around kind of LGR staffing, the changes and the impact of that. So I think the first thing to recognise is that we are the only, I mean, there's Peterborough as well, but we are the only local highway authority. It's not a function that the districts undertake. So with regards to kind of change and impact, we've been carefully managing that with colleagues, making sure that they kind of understand how things are progressing and also what the potential impacts might be. Obviously, I say might because at the moment it's not clear exactly what the picture is going to look like. The other element to just consider is our teams are already place-based. They already work out of a district model, which again is something which is hopefully going to mitigate any changes for the longer term, and also mean that their kind of feelings around potential changes as well are maybe not as heightened as they could be where colleagues are covering county-wide roles, or they have a similar role to someone else working at a district council. So I think it's something that we're definitely aware of, we're conscious of, we're trying to manage the impact of and mitigate it as much as possible. And obviously, once we have further clarity, then we'll have to address it further at that stage. With regards generally to responsibilities, it is a difficult area. It's not always obvious to members of the public or even officers. In some cases, what is public highway, what isn't adopted, what might be under kind of other ownership. Our mapping systems, which are available to the public, do clearly set out what is adopted and what is unadopted. What we're looking to do within our asset management system as well is to try and make that even clearer. So when someone wants to report a fault, then they'll only be able to report an issue if it is actually on the public highway when they actually click to report a defect. If it's in an area that isn't, it will come up with a third party responsibility and everything else. So that makes it kind of easier at the point of reporting something. And then vegetation and overgrowth, again, yes, I outlined in response to kind of Councillor Manning what we're trying to do there with regards to encroaching vegetation, managing that better, and trying to get the message out to kind of parishes, communities and residents as well for some more self-ownership and cutback there too, instead of having to follow the kind of 21-day kind of lettering approach that we have to at the moment, which can then mean that issues aren't addressed as quickly as they could be in other circumstances.
Thank you very much. Just to add to that as well, the My Cambridge maps that shows you where's adopted and where's not, I'm assuming most people in this room know about that, but it is incredibly useful. I think we probably need to get that out to more members of the public. There's also the real issue of utilities. I mean, I've got a case in my division at the moment where local residents are up in arms and furious at the county council about the state of the pavement. It turns out it's a Virgin Media cover, and it's Virgin Media that aren't fixing it and haven't been fixing it for ages. But it reflects badly on the council because members of the public tend to think that it's the pavement, the council should be fixing the pavement, when actually it's Virgin Media's cover. So it's one of those difficult things. We possibly need to figure out what we can do from a comms perspective in communicating, whose is what and whose responsibility is what, and how we get that message across. Thank you for the question, though. Councillor Hathorn.
Thank you. So I kind of assumed that as this was in the process of being finalised, that highways maintenance officers have already started adopting some of the practices, because I've seen large areas, a couple of large areas in my division, which were full of potholes and which have been a nightmare for a very long time, actually having really large patched areas, and it has been absolutely brilliant. And to see something that everyone would agree is a sensible approach to managing potholes delivered on the roads in your division so that residents of the public can see it and I can see it, is just such a rewarding and sensible thing. So I think this new approach is to be absolutely applauded, and we are already seeing the benefits of it. So thank you for that, and I really support the new approach. I've got 3 questions. So historically, I'd had a road that was miscategorized as being unadopted when it was adopted, and then when I reported it, there had to be a long delay because a whole batch of roads had to be recategorized at the same time because it's too expensive. Does the new system make it quicker if a road is miscategorized to tick it as being an adopted road? Secondly, if we make this decision today, can I go home and start reporting a load of faults that are under the new criteria? Is it ready to go at the point when we make the decision? Is that my afternoon filled up with reports of faults? And then the final question is, so in terms of the pipeline of people going into the system, I've got a pair of 15-year-old children, and suddenly, you know, what do you want to do with the rest of your life is the big question, and they struggle to get work experience. Everyone struggled to get work experience, and the government today has been talking about, you know, having different routes for 14-year-olds and beyond. Like, is there an active approach to talk to people, young people in the county, about what a career maintaining highways and working in highways looks like? Because it offers that very rare thing, it strikes me, which is a job with a great deal of security for the future decades, a lifelong job. So yeah, is this something the county council is supporting and will be able to support and make happen?
Thank you. I have to admit, I took last week off to redo my kitchen, and while I was there, my electrician has his 15-year-old son helping him, which is lovely to see. Actually, a kid that was really enthusiastic about being on the tools and having a career doing things, and hopefully it is the same within highways. We do need to work on the worker abuse so that we're getting at the moment, and make sure that people really do appreciate those people. But Josh, do you want to answer that a little bit more fully?
Thank you. So the unadopted road versus kind of adopted, was that just a general question about that process?
Well, so there was an adopted road, but it was on the system as unadopted, and however many times you reported it, it was like, well, so we've got it, it's on the list, but it's too expensive to switch the button. We need to do it in bulk, so you're going to have to wait till we do it with all the roads. So has the new system made that easier if something is miscategorized on the
Oh, okay. Yes, it has. Absolutely. Whilst we have to go to the supplier at the moment, from September, we'll also be able to do all of those changes ourselves, which basically means we can do it direct. So yes, it is much quicker and easier than previously. The next question was around when is this ready to go live? So essentially at the moment, we're rolling out training to all of the maintenance officers. You know, that's kind of face-to-face sessions in the depots where we're running through everything, making sure it's all understood, sharing the best practice, and also kind of producing some crib sheets, highway maintenance kind of handbooks and everything else that are linked to the asset management strategy, but mean that they don't have to trawl through kind of 100 pages to find what they need. So it will launch officially from the 1st of September. So that's when the highway operational standards will be phased out. You know, last day with that, and I'm sure we're all sad to see it go, is the 31st of August. And then the new HAMs will come in from the 1st of September. It's good to know that, you know, we are already operationalizing some of it. And that's definitely what we've focused on kind of across, you know, kind of the county with the teams as well. What can we do now rather than waiting until the 1st of September? And then finally, work experience. Yes, it's something that's really important, kind of getting people interested in working on the highways. You know, we're currently working on finalising kind of a apprenticeship opportunity with M Group, which is more around the operative side, and that's going to be operated out of our March depot with kind of a first intake from September. So that's a real positive. And something we've been able to kind of enable and unlock there by providing the facilities for M Group. A couple of weeks ago, we had about 14, a group of 14 kind of work experience sixth formers that came in, and my team kind of ran them through kind of highways design and a few other things as well. And we have a number of those sessions kind of over the year too. I do think there is probably more we could do to standardize that approach. In addition, we have officers going out with our contractors to kind of schools to kind of talk about, you know, the highways again, what their job is, what the different options are, kind of working for Cambridgeshire County Council. Recently, I think we went into Wychford Village College to do that. So it's definitely something we are doing, but it is something we could probably do more of as well.
Thank you, Josh. And yeah, actually, I've been to one of those M Group days where they go into the schools, they bring in a dragon patcher, everything else. It's amazing to see how inspired the kids get by seeing all the equipment there. Robin and I were actually lucky enough last week to go along to event where we managed to get all of our highways maintenance officers together, and a lot of the people filling the potholes on the road. It actually took 2 cohorts because there are so many of them. There are so many people out there across our county maintaining the roads. But it was really inspiring to meet everyone and see just how passionate they are about roads and improving them. It was great to get them all in a room, have a really good talk to them. It really is inspiring to see the people that we have working in this organisation that really do give us their all. They are working out there in all conditions, doing an awful lot of things in a really difficult network with a really big backlog. So yeah, it's good to see, and we need more and more of those. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. I haven't got any questions, but I did want to say a couple of things. Highways has been one of the greatest challenges administrations since 2021 have faced, having inherited massive historic underfunding, a lack of recognition, I think, across the authority of what the problems actually were, a really poor contract, the unique nature of our roads, and I think also a serious issue of staff morale in some sections. It can be a very debilitating service to work in, where you feel you are constantly under attack and under unsustainable pressure. And I just want that to be put on the record, because those aren't good working conditions, and that's something that it's been very important to address. So I'm really pleased to see in the papers that we have got today the coming together of a number of some really important things and important developments, a much better, well negotiated set of changes to the contract, some good favourable intervention criteria, more innovation and interest in doing new things and trying out new things, making those judgments as to what's actually going to work, some money. And I think it's fair to say that more money on its own doesn't guarantee a better service, but more money together with those other things does. And some customer responsiveness. I think it's fair to say not everywhere in the service, but in a lot of far many more places in the service than it was, a sense of wanting to really engage with the customer, whether it's residents, whether it's parish councils, and have those conversations and be a visible service out there, actually doing things and responding to people. And all of that is really good and comes together in the papers that we're seeing today. So I really, really welcome that. It's money, it's more money, it's better ways to enable that money is spent well, but I would caution that this isn't going to solve everything by any stretch of the imagination, because we still face the consequences of that awful, huge historic underfunding, and that's something that only the government can address. We haven't got £800 million at our beck and call on this, and spending it at the rate we're spending, although that's vastly increased in recent years, isn't going to solve that problem. We do need to continue making the case to government for the unique situation that we are in, most of it not of our own making, and to seek the investment that we need to ensure that we have a road network that is fit for all users of it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dupre. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and be brief. I just wanted to add to all of this discussion to say thank you to everybody involved, to echo the comments of both opposition and administration members today. This has been something of a labor of love, but genuinely one of the most rewarding experiences I've had on council. Not many people come here imagining and dreaming of days where we get to spend literal hours poring over the minutiae of a 180-page document, the first draft of which came to this committee, I believe, in December. And it was a real joy to be able to sit with Alex and Ian and Darren and everybody and say, right, what can we actually make work here? And I think this is a very good example of ways that politicians of all colours can come together and actually work on something for the good of the community as a whole, within the very strict budgeting constraints and other boundaries that we have. I really do think that this new approach to things is going to make things better for us, for everyone. And I really can't wait to see that that effort paying off for all of you. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I don't think I have anyone else on my list. I'll just echo those sentiments again about that working group. I think this council, one of the joys of this council is actually the committee system. It can be challenging at times, but it is really good when we're able to get together and do things. And it is good to see so much of this committee actually happens on a cross-party basis, with everyone agreeing on things. And it's good to see so many people in this room that I think are just passionate about improving our roads. So that is brilliant. We do need to be aware through all of this, as Councillor Dupre pointed out, about the size of the backlog we have in this county. £800 million is a phenomenal maintenance backlog. And there are some roads that just desperately need resurfacing. And that even with this new updated standards, you're at the point of where does the pothole end? Actually, it ends at the entire road, and the entire road needs resurfacing. And we aren't going to be able to do that overnight. So I do just need to do a little bit of setting expectations on this one, that it does, while these standards are much, much better and will work far better on the majority of our network, there will obviously be some cases where roads just need resurfacing or need a surface treatment because they've reached the end of their lives. So we do need to be aware of that as well in things. But I think this is a really good pragmatic set of thresholds. I think it's a really good set that will let us get ahead of things, that will help us, catch more of those teenager potholes before they grow up into, really bad adults, and make sure that we fix them early. It will hopefully allow us to spread the load a little bit more over the course of the year, and be able to really provide a better service for the people of Cambridgeshire, and hopefully get us back on the right track. If I don't have anyone, so I don't think I'm seeing anyone disagreeing with this new highway asset management strategy. Is there anyone disagreeing? No. Can I take that by affirmation then, that we all agree this, and we look forward to seeing it rolled out next week, please, Josh? In fact, yesterday. Please, can I have it rolled out yesterday? Brilliant. Okay, so we'll take that one as done. So we are, I'll just read out the recommendations just so we can be sure. We are approving the Highways Asset Management Strategy, approve the thematic approaches summarised in item 3.6 and set out in Appendix 1 regarding how the Council's different highways assets will be managed in the future, approve the implementation of the Highways Asset Management Strategy from the 1st of September 2026. So you have got a few weeks to make this happen, Josh, and delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Highways and Transport Committee to make minor amendments to the Highways Asset Management Strategy as required. So I think we're all agreeing that. So we've been going for an hour exactly. I'm hoping that we can get this done before 12. So the next up we have is the Highways Investment Winter Readiness Programme. And again, that will be presented by the Head of Asset Management, Design and Delivery. Josh, it is the Josh show today. Over to you. You're doing brilliantly.
Thank you. So this report seeks approval for an additional £5 million investment in Cambridgeshire's highways network, focused on preventative maintenance works that will help prepare our roads for the coming winter. This funding builds upon the record levels of investment that the council has already committed to highways maintenance and improvement in recent years. The report responds directly to the feedback we continue to receive from residents, parish councils and elected members who consistently identify the condition of our roads as one of their highest priorities. It also reflects the lessons learned from this challenging winter just gone, when severe weather led to a substantial increase in defects, customer reports and demand for reactive repairs. The proposed programme is designed to take action before problems occur. By sealing roads and addressing deterioration early, we can reduce the likelihood of potholes forming, improve network resilience, and extend the life of our highway assets. This preventative approach allows us to invest public money more effectively by carrying out the right treatment at the right time, reducing the need for more extensive and costly repairs in the future. The investment will deliver approximately 330 kilometres of additional preventative treatments across the county, including mastic repairs, drag and patching, structural patching and crack sealing. These treatments will improve road condition, create smoother and safer journeys for residents, and help reduce disruption caused by emergency repairs during the winter months. For residents and road users, the expected benefits are significant. The programme aims to reduce the number of potholes appearing on the network, enable quicker responses to safety defects that do occur, improve ride quality, reduce complaints, and increase confidence that the council is proactively maintaining its highways. The proposals also support the Council's wider ambitions for a healthy, fair and sustainable Cambridgeshire. A well-maintained highway network helps people access work, education, healthcare and leisure opportunities, supports local economic growth and enables active travel and public transport. By intervening earlier in the life cycle of our roads, we can also reduce the carbon impact associated with more extensive reconstruction works and minimise repeated visits and disruption. Members will also note that the programme includes innovation and trial activity to test new repair methods and technologies, helping us better understand what works most effectively and ensuring that future investment decisions continue to be evidence-led and focused on achieving best value for residents. Overall, this report presents a strong and continued commitment to investing in our highways network, which is clearly a priority for our residents. It is practical, data-driven. It is a practical, data-driven and preventative approach to improving the condition and resilience of Cambridgeshire's roads ahead of winter while maximising the benefits of this additional investment for residents, communities and taxpayers. I'm therefore pleased to recommend the report to the committee and welcome any questions members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we get to questions from members, Josh, we've had 2 public questions in relation to this item. So first up, I've got Councillor Mark Lunn, who is in the room. I see there in a rather dashing waistcoat. Mark, come up to the seat. And I'm assuming you know the drill, but you have 3 minutes to ask your questions and the traffic lights will go red or green, amber, red as you go.
Thank you, Chair. Given developments since drafting and submitting this question, I hope the answers are quick, easy and positive. As the Chair said, I'm Mark Lunn, South Cambridgeshire District Council, who together with my ward colleague, Councillor Farhan Hussain, represent Shelford Ward, comprising the villages of Little Shelford, Great Shelford and Stapleford. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Councillor Hussain, who cannot be here today. The residents of Little Shelford, Great Shelford and Stapleford, together with, I suspect, many motorists, are grateful to the County Council for the resurfacing of both Granham's Road and Tunwells Lane earlier this year. We are also grateful that the resurfacing of Cambridge Road up to and beyond the city boundary has been included in the budget for this financial year. The road is a major artery into Cambridge, Addenbrooke's Hospital and the Cambridge Biomedical Campus, from not only Shelford Ward, but also from Sawston, Duxford, Whittlesford, and villages and towns such as Saffron Walden in North Essex. It is also a key route between the Genome Institute and the Biomedical Campus, both of which, as I'm sure you are aware, are world-leading research and development institutions. The A1301, Cambridge Road in particular, has been in dire need of resurfacing for a number of years, and is a very poor advertisement for firms and institutions looking to invest in South Cambridgeshire. Despite being a third of the way through the financial year, no date had, at the time of writing, been provided as to when the resurfacing work was to be carried out, and the summer is passing quickly by. Our questions, therefore, are: when is Cambridge Road going to be resurfaced? And secondly, can the committee assure Farhan, me, the parish councils, residents and businesses such as Scottsdale's Garden Centre that the disruption due to diversions will be kept to a minimum and that there will not be a repeat of the situation when Tunwells Lane was resurfaced when people were effectively unable to access local businesses in Great Shelford? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lunn, and thank you for all the work you've been doing, ferociously representing your residents in that area. Josh, over to you though for the dates.
Thank you. So thank you for your question. First of all, the Council recognises that this is an important route for businesses, communities and residents, and the local desire for works to be delivered as swiftly as possible. Work of this nature will always cause some level of disruption as there is a need to close the road and deliver the work overnight. The Council will work with its contractors and the community to mitigate this disruption as much as possible through engagement with councillors and residents, considerate phasing and communication during the work. The work is due to commence on site from the 3rd of August and will run through until September. A diversion route will be in place and we've been working with the emergency services, given this is a blue light route, as well as public transport providers. Communications have gone out to residents, councillors and the wider community, and a phasing plan will shortly be shared so everyone has visibility of where and when work will take place. Face-to-face visits to key businesses along the route have also now been completed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh, and thank you, Councillor Lunn, for your question. Appreciate it. Right. Next we have Elizabeth McWilliams, who I believe is joining us on Zoom. Elizabeth, can you hear and see us? Oh,
I can. Can you hear me? There might be a bit of background noise at my end. Can you
No,
hear me all right?
we can hear you perfectly. That's good. And I'm sure you know the drill. You have 3 minutes to ask your question, so over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much for allowing me to address this meeting once again, Chair. This council borrowed over 20 million for highways maintenance as part of the 26 to 27 business plan last February. It's now borrowing a further 5 million. What is the rationale for prioritising the maintenance outlined in the meeting paper over desperately needed junction safety upgrades, such as those at the Humphreys Way junction on the A10?
Thank you very much for your question. Josh, do you want to respond to that one first?
Thank you for your question. The £5 million of funding referenced in the winter readiness report is existing funding which will be reallocated from an earmarked highway maintenance reserve. The £5 million borrowing was to replace more flexible funding reassigned from an existing capital maintenance programme to winter readiness. If the council had not approved this borrowing, the budget would necessarily reduce. It's important to note that the borrowing is currently planned for 28-29 and is not yet allocated. A paper was brought to a meeting of the Highways and Transport Committee earlier in July. This identified the most appropriate route to progress the Humphreys Way project. The Humphreys Way project is a new capital improvement project. This is different to highways maintenance. The design and development work associated with Humphreys Way is due to be completed by March 2027, with further funding options to be considered nearer that time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. I think it's also important to note that highway maintenance is also road safety in a lot of cases. You look at a lot of our fen roads and it's absolutely vital that we keep those maintained to a good standards, particularly those that are by, large bodies of water. So I don't think it should be one or the other. It is all about improving our roads though and getting them back into the state that they need to be. But thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for your question and thank you for coming along. Members, you've got the papers in front of you. Do we have any questions or points of debate? Go on, Councillor Goldsack. You can go first.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question linked with a comment, really. I welcome all of this. I think it's a step in the right direction. I think, good to see. And but my question is, using a parochial example, I'm very pleased to see the forecast repairs to the Soham Road on the A142. However, we were recently told of impending road closures on the A142 last week, but we were told that there would be at least 4 weeks' notice before we know what's going on. That's impossible because there was 10 days between the actual original notice and the actual proposed start date. And the diversionary routes were, quite frankly, I think my 8-year-old granddaughter could have come up with better ideas. I'm going to pick up something the chairman just said as well. We cannot, should not, and should totally avoid using peat-damaged fenland roads as alternative routes to major A roads. The local drivers know where the dips are, know where the bumps are, and know where the problems are, and drive accordingly. The non-drivers that are on diversionary routes don't, and they go at excess speeds, and they're the ones that cause the problems. And exactly as the chairman said, where there's water and where there's a bumpy road, the logical outcome often occurs. So I would just ask us, implore us to say, whilst we're doing lots of good stuff here, our communication methods out to the public on road closures as a result of the additional stuff are dramatically improved. And if not dramatically improved, they should be dramatically improved, but not just in terms of data, in terms of the timings of the data, because obviously, as in the example I've just said there, we were set up to fail.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goldsack. Josh, do you want to respond to that? Do you know the details of that one?
So without knowing those details specifically, I suppose in an emergency situation, the police would be able to divert onto the nearest possible viable route. If it was a highways diversion, then we would divert onto a road of the same class, essentially. So if we were talking about the 142 at Soham, then depending on where it is, we might take the diversion around the 1123, the A10, up to Ely and back around, for instance. And that's the type of diversion that we'd look to put in place for planned work if we were undertaking it on the 142 between Soham and Ely. Completely agree regarding comms. You know, we don't want to score any own goals here. We want to make sure that we give enough time to get advanced warning signs up on site, do letter drops, and make sure that everyone is as aware as possible of work before it takes place. That's why, with regards to this program, what we've looked at from a you know, more strategic perspective is everything that needs road closures will be at the back end of the program, to give us time to schedule those in properly, and we'll be looking at the quick wins, if you like, first, which can be done under less disruptive forms of traffic management.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. They're good and accurate answers. I think, as well as communications and getting the public on side, I think there's an element of PR to this. So, for instance, you're absolutely right. The 1123 and the A10 were the suggested alternative routes, right? But no mention was made of the parallel road, which is the Coates and Broad Peace in Soham, which is the cut through to Barway. It's very local. I do apologise for this. We all do this, but effectively you've got the A142 and then running parallel to this and coming out at a pretty horrible junction, if I'm honest with you, is at the road. So people down those roads didn't know whether they could get to their houses or get back because of the alternative road. That's what I'm saying. We're missing an opportunity for PR. PR should be, how positive is we're doing your road, right? But what we're starting off is, oh, that's going to mean a terrible diversion, and I've got to go 20 miles out my way. You see what I mean? We've got to reverse that message and get that much more positive to the look what we're doing for you, not the and this is how it will impact you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gosling. It is always a really big challenge that people, particularly in Cambridge, where the roads are so congested anyway, we get complaints about potholes, and we fill potholes in, and we get complaints that we're filling in potholes. You literally cannot win, but it is really important that we do it, and I think people are really appreciative once it is done, and we do need to get those messages out there early with good routes for people to go and everything else. Next, I've got Councillor Green.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is definitely the right thing to be doing. We're proactively looking at this and hopefully putting the work in now to make next winter much easier than the last one. However, I do have two misgivings about this, and they are pretty big misgivings, actually. The first one is about the funding. So the 5 million is coming from a drawdown from the A14 detrunking, and then 5 million is going to be allocated to prudential borrowing in 28-29 to make up for this. So given again LGR, are we actually borrowing money for this winter readiness project and then passing the bill on to one of the new unitaries, perhaps two of the new unitaries, to pay for this? Because 28-29 is well into the local government reorganisation window. So that's my first question. Secondly, my second misgiving is about the transparency for where all of this work will take place. 3.5 and 3.6 in the report do make it clear that it's going to be a very data-driven approach to this, which I support. But I would ask that the committee's given some opportunity to scrutinise the work, and in particular looking at where it takes place across all the divisions and how much of the budget is being spent in each of the divisions. I do feel that there needs to be a little bit more transparency in all of our sort of highways maintenance work, and a chance for the committee to look at where the work's taking place. I realise this would be extra work for officers. I realise that some of the work is going to be, spending £15, £20 on a patch, but I just feel that it would be good to get some idea of where all the work is taking place across the county and in each division. So I'd just like to ask that as an action item, could we have something added to the action log to bring a report back to committee so that we can actually scrutinise where this additional maintenance is taking place? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I'll take that last point first. So I'm not sure it would be worth us having another committee paper precisely on where it has been done, but I'm sure once the work has been done, officers can circulate the list of where it has taken place. I know there is a big long list that's being circulated, and I'm sure within this committee circulating that list would be appropriate if officers are okay with that. So I think that would allow people to see it. You're right, it is important that we're transparent with where things are going. Hopefully most people will see it on the ground and they'll actually just see it in their own area and with their own eyes. As you say, we do need to be data led in this. We also do need to be slightly careful that we don't get into a parochial battle of, oh, you've spent, you know, X amount in my patch versus Y amount in your patch versus Z amount in someone else's patch. And I know, well, we haven't done that for a while. There has been cases of that in the past. And what I want to make sure is that we're spending it in the most cost-effective areas. To actually counter your first point, which is that, yes, sadly, we are having to, in the future, borrow money. Our capital program this year is borrowing some money to be able to do that. Why we do that is because we all know that prevention is cheaper than cure. So the more of this we can get early, it's essentially an investor save. You know, you're spending this money early, getting to potholes early, rather than trying to do it in the middle of pothole season when they're far more likely to fail. It's costing you more money and everything else. So I think it is really important to do this because I think it does save money in the long run. Getting our roads back into a good state saves us money in having to repair them later. So I think that's why we need to do it. But I do think that it's important that we do it in a really data-led way as well, and that it's not done on trying to, you know, pork barrel politics it or anything else like that. It needs to be done the right way. But Josh, I don't know if you want to add anything on that yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So I think just to build on Alex's point there regarding the 5 million and borrowing, that is allocated for 28-29. At the moment, it is unallocated. You know, we haven't identified any schemes to spend that money, so to speak, and that would be a decision that would go through business planning and also to March H&T nearer that time to kind of allocate that funding as well. So potentially some of those discussions could be had then, LGR aside. As Alex has outlined, kind of this is a data-led approach. It is an agnostic approach as well that we're taking here. We're looking to deliver on a district basis. So, you know, each district will have its own gang, own work program, own list of prioritized work, which has been ranked through kind of, you know, defect density via asset condition data as well. One of the things I'd highlight that is an advantage of this particular approach is that there is something to justify why we've done location A instead of location B, whether that is to a member, you know, a resident or whatever else. There will be a clear kind of auditable trail which can justify why we've done one place over another, which is obviously a benefit.
Okay. And just to, sorry, carry on from that a little tiny bit. I know we're aiming to bring back much earlier this year the capital program, so that we can get that approved early to be able to get design going. I wonder whether it might be worth making sense adding what was done here as an appendix to that one so people can see the prioritization, how that happened.
They might not dovetail from a time perspective because we're hoping to bring the capital program, as in the long list of schemes, not the funding approval, to December's committee. Obviously we'll kind of be partway through this program by then. I don't have I don't see any issues with providing an update on this program, high level, within the March paper, which basically summarizes, you know, what's been achieved.
That sounds good. I think anything work we can do to gather the evidence of how successful this has been would be really appreciated as well. What we want to know is that this is preventing potholes, and gathering that data early would be a useful thing to do to figure out how many of these we're preventing. Sorry, I've taken up quite a bit though. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up a little bit on Councillor Goldsack's comments about communication, because We have a huge job with all of these roads. We have thousands of kilometers of roads, and we have and communication about that has to be very micro level. It's, can I use this road? Can I use that junction? How do I get around with all of this? And that does take a huge amount of time. I have to admit, if I know that a road is going to be closed for any length of time at all in my division, I hang my head and cry, because I know that at least a week is going to be taken updating things on Facebook and trying as best I can to answer the barrage of entirely justified and reasonable questions that come back from members of the public, and trying to second guess what people are going to ask is a huge issue. One of the things that I've been very pleased to see, and it's one of the priorities within reorganisation of the highway service, has been to improve communication between officers and councillors, officers and parish councils. And we, the members and the parish councils, are absolutely key points of contact for this. And I think we just have to, yes, hang our heads and cry, but just, get on and do it, because it really, really matters and it makes a difference to people. I recently had a situation in which I had to update people on 2 or 3 different finish times for a piece of work. Yes, it'll be open on noon tomorrow. No, it'll be open 6 p.m. tomorrow. No, it'll be open 5 a.m. the morning after. And all of that. And it is hard work doing all of that for and responding to questions for thousands of residents, but it needs to be done. And I'm really pleased that with that focus on communication around some of the roles that we have, I've seen a noticeable improvement in the responsiveness of some officers and the focus that they have on communicating proactively with councils. Shout out to Josh sitting next to me, one of the absolute stars in that, but also shout out to people I've had contact with in recent months, James Chapman and George Carson, both of whom have been absolutely superb in their desire to get the message out and being responsive to me and to the parish councils when it has come to needing to convey information, and particularly changes to information. So I sense a real change in the communicativeness of the service. Whether there are ways in which we can do that in a smarter way, technically, I don't know. Whether there are ways in which we can do things better in non-technical ways, I don't know. But I think the will is there in a way that I haven't seen that for a long time. And all of us around this table are a key part in that, as are our parish councils for those areas that have them.
Thank you very much, Councillor du Preez, and I'm sure those officers will get a good message about that. So thank you. Councillor Bulat.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Green covered one of the points I was going to make about LGR, but I'll focus on 2 other comments and then I'll follow up with a question. I think extra money on highways is always needed, so I'm going to support this investment, but I do have some points around accountability and further scrutiny of this as well. And I just want to put on record as well, I understand, of course, the arguments of the challenges since 2021, the legacy of the highways contract and so on. But I think it's all well and good to say, well, only government can fill in this huge funding gap. But to me, as a local councillor, what I'm looking at is the paper in front of me. So I'm asking 2 questions, and that's where my comments come from. I'm asking, is it the best value for money for our residents, not on hypotheticals or whether miracles can happen? And then the second question I'm asking is what choices are actually made and whether those choices are the right ones that we think our residents should have. And obviously, this is due to priorities that are set out locally by whichever administration is in charge of whichever council that makes those choices. My first question is around the borrowing, because obviously we have the 20 million, I don't doubt is needed, part of the business plan, and is another 5 million. Councillor Green asked about whether this leaves the legacy to new councils. But my question is mainly around, wasn't this predictable when the budget was set? So therefore, including the 25 million back then, or what happened in this process in the business with budget planning, and now to actually think, we need this additional borrowing now, despite all the challenges with LGR. So I just want to understand that kind of thinking around that. And then the second point I want to make is that in the table in 3.3 does note that the additional officer resource is recruited. So we're kind of already assuming this will go on. So regardless, to project manage and contract manage this program, which I think is obviously important for accountability. But I do note this is probably almost an 8% overhead. So to obviously hold the works to account and to manage that, I don't say it's not needed, but usually when I see a standalone program, I think 8% overhead is needed. So I wonder, like, how much are we actually expecting, how much resource actually needed to manage this work? Because I thought it's a bit high because it's part of, like, kind of ongoing maintenance as opposed to having, a standalone program where 8 to 10% is quite normal to have an overhead on that. And the final thing, if I may, and feel free to pick up on any of those comments, Chair, or Josh, is how do we actually know the program is successful and what will come back? And I don't necessarily need another committee paper. It can be an update to members, but how do we actually know that we achieved our KPIs and what are we actually measuring here? And how can we come back and say this borrowing was worth it because we delivered on X, Y, and Z, and we actually achieved our aims? Because I'm not sure if it's entirely clear from the paper itself. But overall, obviously, I support more investment in highways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bullock. So I'll answer some of those bits first of why is this different and why the extra money. I think, firstly, all of us know this winter was incredibly challenging. I've been the chair of the committee for a number of years now, and it's probably this worst/second worst winter I've had. There was one in, I think it's 2022, 2023, when there was a really bad cold spell, and we had a lot of potholes breaking out. That was when I'd literally just come into this role. This year was deeply challenging. We had a period of snow right at the beginning of January, and while most people don't remember it, you can totally see it in the data that the potholes just went absolutely off the charts. We went from about 500 a week to about 2,000 a week, which was phenomenal, and it has been we're doing about 200 kilometers of resurfacing and surface treatments this year. So if you do that, what about those other roads? Is there anything more that we can be doing to be preventing those potholes from occurring in the first place, as we're not getting into the situation where we're trying to fill all those potholes in the middle of winter when it's the worst possible time to be doing it? And therefore, is there a way that we can invest extra money to be able to get ahead of the problem and try and prevent more in the first instance? And that was the challenge that we put to Josh and the team, and that's where this program has come through, looking at alternative products, liquid mastic, which helps go in and see all those potholes. So then the work that the team has been doing, and Josh, I'll let you expand more on this in the future, is about identifying those areas where there are a lot of potholes that repeatedly come up, what I commonly refer to as pothole quilts, and how can you go and do a bigger patch to prevent those in the future, to those areas where we know we're going to get potholes next year. Can we go and treat them early? And that will be how do we measure that? It's going to be the interesting approach, is how, as you've just said, how do you know those areas where you've been getting historically lots of potholes? Can we do something in the summer and then measure how many potholes we've then got in those areas? But Josh, do you want to talk a little bit more about the approach you've taken and how you've prioritized and how we can measure?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So yeah, I'll start on that point about the approach taken. So essentially, how this program has been developed is from various sources of asset condition data. So what we've looked at is kind of our scanner data. So that's our annual surveys where we drive around the whole of the network, and that then gives each section of the network a score, essentially. And that's one of the condition metrics we've used. The second is something you might be familiar with or has been mentioned before, which is essentially in all of our inspection vehicles, we have a camera which is running all of the time, which can pick up all safety defects. As well as safety defects, it can also pick up any defect from 20 mil in depth. So essentially, that's kind of live data that's always running, that's geolocated. So within a couple of centimeters, it can tell us where it is on the road. So we've got that data as well for the whole of the county. In addition to that, we've then overlaid that with locations where we've repaired potholes over the last 5 years. So that gives us a really clear picture of areas where we've visited multiple times to do similar work, locations where potentially there's a number of defects, the road's starting to fail, but not failing to an extent which would justify a larger scale intervention like a resurfacing project or whatever else. And then overlaying that with scanner data as well. That's produced kind of 18,000 individual locations across the county, which we've then prioritised, basically. And we've done that based on, you know, what's a suitable kind of length for a patch using any of these particular products. Well, around kind of 25 meters in linear length. So we've looked at joining defects together within a 25-meter section, and then measured it by density of defects within that section to then determine which is the priority in each district. So that's kind of the approach we've taken. It's essentially a live approach, and we'll be continuing to kind of feed new data into that program as we go. So we'll always be able to address the worst defects as this program gets rolled out. With regards to the overheads, how it's being managed, we have a couple of project managers who are going to look after this on kind of a place-based basis. So they'll be responsible for managing the contractor, managing the communication, the governance, budgets, and everything else kind of across either Fenland and Hunts or South City and East. That kind of budget allocation of 400k, there's also a contingency in there for an additional 4 officers over winter if they're needed. So if there is another spike, obviously we're hoping to get ahead of any spikes through delivering this preventative maintenance, but there is additional kind of resource in there as well if it's needed, as well as some kind of contingency for risk as well. So that's essentially where that 400k comes from, and it's actually potentially up to 7 officers up until the end of this financial year, rather than kind of the 2 that are referenced who have responsibility for managing the programme. Going back to the £5 million and, you know, borrowing, etc. At this particular point in time, this £5 million has been taken from reserves that we already have. There isn't any kind of prudential borrowing now, because they're from our reserves. But if it was needed in 28-29, then that's potentially where the borrowing would come in. And obviously that might potentially be at the discretion of a unitary authority to kind of decide whether they do borrow that or whether there is further funding that comes from elsewhere to kind of cover that shortfall. But it will depend on their priorities potentially at that particular time.
Thank you very much, Josh. And I think that is a really important point and something that we've been clear on, that if we have a reserve that is earmarked for road maintenance and we have roads that are not in a great state, we should probably be spending that reserve on road maintenance and getting that done earlier rather than later. Sorry, Josh, do you want to?
Sorry, Alex, other Alex. And I missed out your final question there. Sorry. So how we were going to measure this. So within item 3.2, we've measured the kind of high level, or we've identified the high level points that we're going to compare. So we're going to look at from 2026, we want to prove that we've reduced the number of potholes that are ordered on the network compared to 2026. We want to be able to show that we've got faster response times to the actual safety defects that we do identify on the network. And also, you know, we had a considerable amount of complaints, customer cases and everything else which came in over last winter, all measurable, and what we'll use to kind of compare to the coming winter as well.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, next, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I would like to thank, recently we've had a road closure in my division and all the officers have been extremely helpful. So I will name check as everybody else seems to have done. So that's Steve McGee, Bob Turner, Neil Stevens and Stephen Bunker. They have been very helpful to me. They've been very helpful to the parish councils and to residents, and the response we've got back has been good. I've even had a very good response from the police. So I will
Thank
so
you.
far, so
Appreciate
good.
it.
I don't want to jinx it now. The question really with regard to the system, I fully support what's here. With regard to the rural roads off the A14, rather than keep trying to patch and everything else, could we not look at putting up signs to say unsuitable for HGVs? Because as soon as we get a road closure on the A14, or like last night, there was another accident. So therefore, all the lorries come off the A14 and they're onto our rural roads. Now, it would just seem to me to make more sense to put up at those junctions, the roads are unsuitable for HGVs because they are destroying the roads and it's creating a much greater maintenance cost for the county council. So, you know, to spend a few £100 on a few signs might help the situation. I know drivers follow their sat navs and what have you, but if they were to see not suitable for HGVs, it might reduce some. I'm not saying it would reduce all, but I just think that might help, and it would alleviate the issues that I get with residents saying, I've now got lines of HGVs coming past my house. I have this morning on my computer photographs of HGVs going down single track rural roads. You know, we really can't keep on with it because it's just destroying the roads, and you know, the rural roads never seem to get that much expenditure on them. So we're in a catch-22 situation. We're destroying the roads, but we haven't got the monies to repair. So that was just the point I wanted to raise there. And then the second point, where we've got multiple patches, multiple potholes on rural roads, are we better to look at mastic screening or structural patching on those roads from your point of view, Josh? And to thank you, of course, for all your responses to me over the last months and years. Oh,
That's all right. Thank you, Councillor Gardner. I'm very glad it's pictures of HGVs you have on your computer and not tractors. But Josh, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah. So first of all, thanks for the positive comments directed to me, but also at those four officers as well. We'll make sure that they're passed on because it's always good to hear. I think multiple potholes on rural roads. The aim with those types of scenarios is to overlay them. So one contiguous patch which kind of seals it. You know, kind of aside from where we might know that something's been repaired as an emergency or maybe not quite hit the right standard or quality expectations, the assumption is that if a pothole repair has been done, then it is a cut and patch repair and that is suitable to be overlaid. The gangs will have some discretion when they're going out on site to make sure that that is the case. But in those locations where we have already done a pothole repair or multiple pothole repairs within an area, we'll be looking to basically seal the road under one patch. Rural roads and expenditure. I think honestly, if you were to look historically, the amount of expenditure that we have spent on rural roads county-wide is a significant part of the highways maintenance budget kind of year on year, especially when you consider kind of the costs of repairing soil affected roads and the large amount of investment that we've had in that over the last kind of 10-year period. I do obviously kind of appreciate that the rural road network is huge. There are a lot of roads out there, and there is a lot that needs doing as well. And then yes, to your first point about the signs, you know, a more holistic approach to kind of highway maintenance, looking at kind of other ways rather than just patching the road. You know, we've done that probably 50 times, definition of insanity and everything else. So is there anything else that we could do differently instead to try and reduce the amount of traffic that's using them?
Thank you very much, Josh. Councillor Manning.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of points of response to things people have said and a couple of questions for Josh. Councillor Golsat, couldn't agree with you more about the communication. Wouldn't it be great if, in reference to the comment the Chair made earlier, if the utilities companies were forced to put a sticker on saying, this is our work, we're being forced to do that. I'm guessing we probably have no power to do that. Just to follow up on the points that Councillor Green raised about LGR, I get your general point, and in addition to what the Chair said, I think we all can agree that the farce of LGR, there's far too much we can't do X, Y, or Z because LGR might do this, into the point where our own government are holding up LGR because they don't know what to do. But the fundamental point is this is work that needs doing no matter what form the unitaries take. These assets will still be there. And to Councillor Bielats, who asked about sort of where this had come from, and I think you do, very frequently have a very good challenge of this administration, but I think I'm very grateful to you for highlighting the actual reason for why this is happening, is because we've got Liberal Democrat leadership. So it's really great for you for highlighting that. Look forward to seeing that on your Instagram later, maybe. I did have two questions there, the officers. I'm looking at 3.8 and 3.10. I'm just wondering about, briefly maybe, if it's too complicated to go into, what this new equipment is. But in 3.10, it talks about different types of suppliers. Now, M Group is our contractor. So are these suppliers to M Group, or are these suppliers to the council that we're asking M Group to use? I mean, there might not be a difference between those two questions, but...
So with regards to suppliers, it would basically be different suppliers that either we identify or M Group identify for the innovation trial. So there might be, providers that M Group are aware of that they want to kind of, bring to the table. And there's also definitely ones that we're aware of that we want to kind of make sure are at that event as well. M Group would be the ones that would manage it on site, with kind of input from us with regards to, comms and road closures and everything.
My basic question was, if we identify a supplier to M Group engage with the supplier. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Councillor Hathorn.
Thank you. So thank you to my highways maintenance officers. I'm not going to mention them in person, but I don't want them to feel left out. So I think spending money on more officers to deliver the work is absolutely essential. That often does seem to be a blocker on action. Officers are in training or on annual leave. There's a crisis elsewhere. So making sure, investment in officers to deliver the work is really important. Innovative solutions, like residents are calling out for that. They're saying, isn't there some, is there a new way? Can we do this differently? So it's good to read that is the approach being taken. Managing maintenance work is really difficult. I think we've all got grievances, and even if everything was delivered absolutely perfectly, there would still be grumbling. But I think, we've all got stuck in diversions, which could be so much better. So that's an ongoing bit of work that really makes a difference. I want to comment, there was a bit of work that happened in my division, a large bit of patching, and it was right next to people's houses. But it was on the hottest day of the year, and it happened between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. And normally there would have been major complaints about that, but everyone just said, it's such a hot day. I'm glad they've modified their practices. I don't care if it's inconvenient or noisy. We've got the road fixed. So on some level, people are just appreciative that work is happening on roads, although there is always going to be grumbling about the delivery. And, and obviously it would be nice to retain a pool of financial reserves for future crises, but for a long time, maintenance has been underfunded. And when you don't spend on maintenance, you don't avoid spending the money. You might have lower taxes for a period of time, but that maintenance spend doesn't go away. It gets bigger and bigger, and sometimes gets worse because problems that could have been fixed more cheaply get worse and worse and more costly to fix. So I think we do have to spend this money, and if we can get things that have got out of hand more under control, then we can prevent or we can reduce future spending. Maintenance spending is never going to go away, but anything we can do to get on top of it, I think everyone in this room pretty much has to support.
Thank you, Councillor Hathorn. Councillor White.
Technology is great when it works. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw a little bit of attention to one part of this that hasn't been talked about a lot, but I'm actually super excited about, which is the pothole innovation trial. So we're only spending a tiny amount of our money on this, but to address points earlier on how we're going to measure things and making sure that we're going to get best value for money, this little trial is going to look at a bunch of different ways that we currently fix potholes, can fix potholes the new ways, and then basically do an experiment to see which one is best. And putting my data science hat on, that's really exciting to me. But also it means that this is going to be some evidence that we can take forward in future to help us make decisions, both for ourselves and after LGR for future councils. And I think this is one of the ways that we are really trying to set up our new councils for future positivity and change. And I think that's really good. And I would really like to just thank Josh for having the foresight to put this and include this in the plan. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt. Right, I think is that everyone? Yep. Okay. Well, firstly, also thank you to Josh. It has been the Josh show today. You have done incredibly well, though, Josh. Well done under intense questions. I think that's really important to say. I think this funding is really, really important. I mean, there is no doubt that we had a really dreadful pothole season this year. We were not alone in that. When I look at the numbers compared to other areas actually did worse. Some did better, some did worse. We were about middle of the table for how difficult this winter was. What is really vital and so welcome to see, though, is how officers and administration, everyone else has responded to that. Say, how do we stop that from happening again? You know, how can we make sure that we are getting things right for our residents? How can we make sure that we are responding to their concerns and addressing them and fixing the network the best we can? So I really do want to say a thank you to the officers that have been working on this and going, okay, what can we do? How can we be more efficient? How can we get ahead of this? How can we make sure that next winter is better? It is brilliant to see it being done in an innovative way as well. To be looking at all the different best practices around the country and deploying this in the best way possible and a way that is measurable is fantastic. So the way that this organization has changed in the last 4 years to be able to pull this together at short notice in a way that is measurable, deliverable, innovative is brilliant. So it is a massive props to Graham, Josh, and the team for being able to do that. And also, it has been so fantastic to hear so many of you members out there talking so fondly about maintenance operatives doing good work. I mean, it is great to see that and great to see how appreciated people are and how the teams are doing such wonderful work in often really challenging times and often really difficult times and often in ways that they aren't appreciated by residents. So I do want to say a big thank you to everyone for that. I'm really excited about this program and see it being delivered over the summer, as I really think it will help things. So let's, without any further ado, let's move to a vote on this one. I think we probably should vote on it. So can I say all those in favour of deploying this £5 million and this new program? Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. And I think that pretty much ends us. We don't, as this is a special meeting, we don't have anything else.
Yeah, before you close,
yes,
can I just ask a general question?
Sure.
Because we have a reserve date on September the 1st. It'd be useful to know whether we're going to do that. At the moment, there's no published papers for it.
I believe we are, but I don't know if anybody else has. I think it's
the DFT paper.
The DFT paper, that's the one.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So yes, that will be in there
thank you.
because that will be every year we now have to do a DFT return. So that will be there. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's good to see you all and enjoy the rest of the summer. Thank you.